Talk Radio.
Santa Clara police might not work 49ers games amid Kaepernick protest. The Union for the Police Force that patrols San Francisco 49ers Levi's Stadium threatened to not work home games over Kaepernick's continued protest of the national anthem, according to multiple reports on Friday night. The Santa Clara Police Officers Association said Kaepernick halting his pre-game protest could result in officers choosing not to work at their facilities, NBC Bay Area reported. The 49ers are scheduled to open the season there against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday, September 12th as part of a national television doubleheader. Kaepernick was photographed.
Finally, we know. We know what the Wetterling family and all of Minnesota have longed to know since that awful night in 1989. We know the truth. Danny Heinrich is no longer a person of interest. He is the confessed murderer of Jacob Wetterling. And for that, he will spend the next 20 years in prison.
We love you, Jacob. We will continue to fight. Our hearts are hurting. We will try and pull. I would love to talk to you all. I'm just not ready yet, because for us, Jacob was alive until we found him. He's taught us all how to live, how to love, how to be fair, how to be kind. He speaks to the world that he knew, that we all believe in, and it is a world that's worth fighting for. His legacy will go on. I want to say, Jacob, I'm so sorry. It's incredibly painful to know his last days, last hours, last minutes.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to King Jordan Radio for Season 5, Episode 2. Tonight we'll talk about that case, the killing of Jacob, 1989, man confesses. We'll get our panel's take on this. We'll also get our panel's take on the upcoming Justin Ross Harris trial, the so-called hot cart death trial. BrockTurner had to register as a sex offender. We'll ask the panel if this is right or wrong. Also, with 9/11 around the corner, we'll touch on that. Where were you? We'll ask the panel. And Bill Cosby to our bringing our guests. First of all, he is making his return. He's an author, a forensic expert, seen on HLN, CNN. Joseph Scott Morgan joins us here tonight on King Jordan Radio. Good evening, Joseph. How are you?
Hey, Jordan. Hey to all the fans out there listening in. It's good to be here with you and your guests this evening.
Absolutely. Also, we have a legal analyst who covered Scott Peterson, Michael Jackson, Conrad Murray. The list goes on and on. Court TV, MSNBC, the beautiful and talented Ann Bremner, defense attorney. Good evening, Ann. How are you?
I'm great. What a nice introduction, and I'm very pleased to be with you guys, especially with you.
Okay, we have New York City defense attorney seen on the Ashley Banfield show, Nancy Grace, a Bronx attorney. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only. He gets into debates with Nancy Grace all the time, and most of the time he's winning in these, in my opinion. Alex Sanchez joins us. Good evening, Alex. How are you?
All right, Jordan, and it's great to be here again with your guests, and I think we're going to have a good time tonight, even though you've got some pretty bad cases there. But, I'm looking forward to a good discussion.
And the first case I did play at the top of the show, which is the 1989 killing of that boy, Jacob M. And Joseph Scott, let me start with you. I know you've been checking out this case. You guys getting 20 years for confessing, and it's he's not even getting it. Do you think it's good the way this is going down, that the parents know what happened to the boy and they could move on? Or do you have a different opinion on it?
Well, as a person that's realistically, well, I like to think that I'm grounded in reality. I understand the courts. I understand the way prosecution works. If they've got this guy, that's rolling over and essentially confessing after all these years. One part of me is in fact happy for the family, so that they know what became of Jacob. It's a hard thing to sit in there with the family and across from them and have to give them confirmatory information relative to an ID, particularly like a child like this. I've had to do it way too many times, and it's heartbreaking. But there's almost a palpable sense of relief. I've been in people's living rooms doing this with them. I've been at the medical examiner or the coroner's office doing this, and you can almost see a weight almost physically lift off their shoulders. Practicality, I understand why a DA might want to do this. I know that they were looking at this guy for multiple counts of child porn. It wouldn't surprise me if that decision for the offering they made kind of played into that. I'll allow esteemed counsel to talk to that, but one of the problems is that his remains never would have been found had this guy probably not pointed out the location or given them some clues, and they would not have known what to do. And then comes the hard work of trying to get him ID'd. Eventually, Jacob has been ID'd vis-a-vis dental records. So part of me is very pleased as a parent. Dark hole somewhere if possible, but you have to look at it from a practical standpoint as well. So all I will say is I'm happy for the family. I'm very happy for them that maybe they can close this door and begin to heal some.
Absolutely. So say you, Alex Sanchez.
This case, I've been following this case for years. Remember, it's 27 years old or so. And I've always found this case to be one of the most disturbing cases I've ever heard. And the facts that have come out are more horrific. I mean, one could speculate as to what happened to this kid once he was kidnapped. But now the facts have come up, and they're even more horrific, and they're horrendous. This kid was kidnapped at gunpoint. He's raped by this guy in the woods. The kid is saying, "What did I do wrong? I mean, he's just like a pure, regular kid, representing. Yes. I mean, he's the quintessential American kid, and a nice kid and a nice family. And yes, he's just taken away by this monster. I did this case on the Nancy Grace show the other day, and they had this photograph of this guy Henrik, or whatever his name is, who was involved, who admitted committing this offense. And this guy, that photograph to me, I mean, this guy looked demonic. It was one of the most frightening photographs I've seen of perpetrators, and I've seen a lot. But the fact of the matter is they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute this guy. That's why he's not going to jail for murdering this kid or raping this kid. He's not going to jail for that. He's going to jail for separate pornography charges, and he's eligible for parole after 20 years. Now, hopefully, after 20 years, he will be what is known as civilly committed. And a civil commitment means that they determine that he's too dangerous to be released, even though he's completed his sentence. And but that's not going to be determined until 20 years down the line, and who knows what some hearing examiner or judge is going to determine at that point. So there's a chance this guy could be out again. So I just find the whole thing very, very disturbing. And I don't even know that the family, I mean, I know they wanted to know, but now that they know exactly what happened to him, I'm not so certain they're gratified that they know what happened.
So say you, Ann Bremner.
Well, that was very well said by Alex. You know, it made me think about out here in Seattle, we had the case of the Green River Killer who killed 48 women, and we took the death penalty off the table. I say we, the prosecutor here in Seattle did, because he gave information about where certain remains were and certain details, you know, of those crimes, so the families could have what we always like to call closure, but which really isn't closure. It's not like a period at the end of the sentence, you know. And I'm sure the family now thinks, oh, we didn't want to know any of this. But we see this again and again when you make these kind of deals, you know, so that you can give families information. And I saw something today from the Polly Klaas Foundation that talked just about that in connection with this particular case. And that is it worse to not know, or is it worse to know? And it sure seems the consensus is here with us and in general is it's better to at least know where they are or where they were and what, you know, not everything that happened, but to at least not have that thought always, are they out there looking for us? Do they need help? You know, all those kinds of things. It's just a horrific situation all the way around.
No question about it. And will he be eligible for parole in 10 years? Alex,
he's eligible. No, from my understanding, he pled guilty to the pornography charges. Mm-hmm. And by the way, he's facing, believe it or not, this guy's facing a minimum of 5 years in jail. So, I mean, I guess if you get some absolute insane judge, you can give him 5 years in jail. But everybody knows, for all intents and purposes, he's going to get 20 years in jail. But let's say he gets 20 years in jail. The guy is, 53 right now. All right, so he's 73 when he gets out, or 73 when he has to be released from jail. You have to be released. Now, what happens after that is they have these, like I was telling you before, these civil commitment hearings. They determine if you're a danger to the community. If you still have these impulses, they conduct all kinds of psychiatric examinations of you, and the judge determines, well, I still think he's a danger to the community. But
right.
What happens if after 20 years, you know, well, he's rehabilitated, he's stable, he's no longer, you know, has these violent impulses, he's under medication, he's under control, you know, a judge could say, you know what, I believe the state has not sustained its burden and convinced this court that he should be civilly committed, and therefore, you know, he's released to parole at 73. You know what? There are 73-year-old murderers out there and sex offenders. And I know a very famous one that's about to go on trial, and his name is Bill Cosby.
I was going to say, I think we're talking about the same guy.
That's a very good point. So he's 53 now, so I take it. And, you know, I saw the Nancy Grace part, and she got very emotional, almost like she didn't want to hear it. So there was a school of thought that it might have been better not to hear it, some say, but I guess that's between the prosecutor and the family. But moving on to another sex case, this is in different circumstances. Let's talk about BrockTurner, but here is what's going on with him.
No, he's not at the doctor's office filling out a questionnaire. Former Stanford University star swimmer BrockTurner is registering as a sex offender. The just-released grim-faced felon showed up at the local sheriff's office outside Dayton, Ohio Tuesday, his mother by his side. She used her sweater to shield him from cameras. 21-year-old Turner spent about 30 minutes filling out the paperwork.
Are you ever going to apologize for what you did?
Later, he and his mother headed to a meeting with his probation officer.
Hi, I've got BrockTurner. Thank you.
They consoled each other until they were let in. And here's the official sex offender's website. It details the young man's physical description. He's 6'3", weighs 170 pounds, and has blue eyes. Protesters have been camped outside the house since his release last week after he served just 3 months in jail for sexually assaulting a young woman on the California campus. Some of the protesters are even armed. Turner's parents spent Labor Day weekend trying to get back to normal.
Okay, Alex Sanchez, I'll start with you. Did they get it right? Should he be on the sex offender's website for the rest of his life?
The sex offender's website situation, I mean, certainly that's good because there's some people that need to be on that website and the community needs to be aware of who they are. I'm beginning to have doubts whether or not somebody should be there for life. I mean, this guy's, 19 years old? And for the rest of his life, he has to register 3 or 4 times a year with the sex offender website. And his address, if you've ever looked at those websites, they put your address, they put your name, they put your car you're driving, the license plate, they put where you work, where you live. I mean, it's very intrusive, and you may deserve to be on that website. But for life, now this case, in some cases, I think that it should be time limited, and you should be eligible at some point to get off that list. Now, this kid, you know what troubles me about this case? What troubles me about this case, and I know every time I say it, I get criticized and I get hammered, and maybe people on this program are going to come after me or callers, whatever. But it really irritates me. The alleged victim in this case, she was stinking drunk. Now, that doesn't justify somebody sexually abusing anybody or touching somebody inappropriately. But why on earth would somebody put themselves in a position where they are almost 3 times drunker than what is legally permissible to drive, for example? You are completely unconscious. You're in an environment, you're not around your friends, and almost anything could happen to you. Again, I'm not saying that justifies any type of improper assault, but it bugs me that someone could put themselves in that position and then wake up and be surprised that somebody has touched them inappropriately. And I don't know, parents need to speak to their kids, or these kids better learn on their own that you need to be responsible in this world, because when you are unconscious and you don't know what you're doing and you are wandering around in a daze, bad things can happen.
Yeah, and Bremner, Seattle defense attorney, why don't you weigh in on this situation?
In full disclosure, I am a Stanford graduate, and I feel like he should be registered for life. She was unconscious. I mean, she was incapable of consent, and that's rape. And he took pictures of her, of her breasts during the attack. He was smiling, I just look at this, and I think, a lot of us ex-sex offender prosecutors, of which I'm one, feel that there's repetition in this kind of behavior, not just with pedophilia, but also with these types of rapes. And so people should be on notice about someone like him. I mean, it was just a horrific crime, and that's why it's had so much attention. And the sentence was, of course, too lenient. So maybe on balance, with the lenient sentence, he's got the lifetime registration. And I, when you look at Stanford, and the opportunities he had, and which a lot of people don't have, which I was lucky enough to have, and he squandered all of it. And then he had a Stanford graduate judge, give him this lenient sentence. I know the Stanford community's been outraged, and I've been a part of that. So maybe it's because I'm from there, but also I prosecuted sex crimes. But this is some of the worst of the worst. She was unconscious, and he raped her.
Well, just for clarification purposes, and when I brought this up the other day, I got hammered on the Nancy Grace show. Okay, he did not have sexual intercourse with her. Now, you may say, well, that doesn't make a difference. He's penetrated with her finger. Now, there are,
right.
Well, it is, but let's face it. In the world of the lesser of two evils, to me at least, that's less than somebody forcibly having sexual intercourse with you. It's bad, but to me, it's not at the highest level. And so that needs to be clarified, because people are throwing around this word rape, and I think the public is confused that it's actual sexual intercourse when it isn't. He basically touched her with his finger. That's wrong, but that's what it is.
you know that it's penetration with any object, no matter how slight the penetration is. It can be a finger, it can be, someone's private parts, it can be an object, and it's, rape is rape is rape. That's what the law says.
Well, that's what the law says, but from a practical point of view.
Yeah,
I hate to reduce it to this, but a finger is less than a penis when it comes to sexual activity, forced sexual activity. That's just a fact, and it's a factor that I'm sure the judge took into consideration. And also, he was stinking drunk too. And I'm not justifying it again. You're responsible for your own actions. But part of his actions were, I think, the result of being drunk. Another irresponsible kid getting drunk and doing something outrageous. And I think there should be some type of time limitations on the sex offense list. How much should it be? Maybe 10 years, 15 years? But there should be some point where you could say, or some judge could say, you know what, I don't think you need to be on this list anymore. You don't seem to be a threat. You're off the list.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's young. And how old was the girl, Alex?
She was 20 or something like that.
She was older than he was. She was actually a graduate of college.
She was older?
College. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's different. He wasn't, it's different in the sense than some of the other cases. But is this the same case, Alex, where she said that she didn't want him to get any a light sentence? Is this one of the cases?
Well, here's what's she said she wanted him to be punished. But she was so drunk that she didn't remember anything that happened to her. So in other words, if she woke up after this incident and just went home, she wouldn't think anything happened to her. The only reason why she learned something happened to her was because several hours later, after they kept trying to shake her and trying to get her to get up and come out of her stupor from drinking, she finally got up and they said, hey, you were sexually molested. And now she's writing all these letters how this sexual molestation has caused a horrible depression and it's caused her to lose a job and it's caused her to do this and do that. You know what? How about exercising some control, not going out, drinking till you're stinking drunk, and acting like a responsible adult? And maybe things like this won't happen. But on the other hand, it still would never justify sexual molestation against anybody. He still deserves to be punished. My only argument is, what is the degree of punishment that is deserving in this case?
She wrote one of the most eloquent statements I've ever seen in my 33-year career, doing television commentary, covering cases, and being a prosecutor for on sex offenses and handling those cases civilly for victims. It was unbelievably poignant, and I think that's part of why this became such a lightning rod, this case, because she voiced, I think, what all victims feel in the most eloquent fashion I have ever seen. I know Ashley Banfield took one of her shows and read that statement on the air on CNN, and it's really just, kind of a cry heard around the world that resonated with people everywhere.
Absolutely. And Joe Scott, let's hear from you.
I think, I don't know, I'd like to kind of address this from an investigative standpoint. I think that it's cases like this that are very frustrating for investigators and police officers that go out on the scene and they see how miserably the bench fails in their job. And so much time is spent pointing fingers at cops and investigators for how poorly they do our jobs as investigators. This is a very deflating type of case, and it's not just this one case. It's there are so many demands that are put on police to go after and investigate things that are essentially, in the whole grand scheme of things, nonsensical when it comes to a lot of drug cases that will never be solved, or they'll never have an end put to them. But yet when you have a case involving physical assault, and that's a very basic kind of rudimentary expectation that you have of being secure in your own person, and the cops look at it as kind of a protector of society. Well, the bench fails in this case miserably, and fails in many other cases like this when the bench is incapable of rendering a decision that gives the public hope that they will be protected in the event that anything happens. And it's not just dealing with people that are say intoxicated. You can have, say, someone that is particularly maybe feeble, a feeble mind, or maybe mentally incapacitated. Well, what's to prevent the court in these same circumstances to say, well, they were just digitally penetrated, and slap a 6-month sentence on the individual that did that. I think this Turner guy, is representative of a lot of people out there, first off, that have very little or no self-control, and will at a drop of a hat perpetrate against other people if they see an opportunity to do it. Now, I can't predict that accurately necessarily with this young man, but I'd say based upon a lot of stuff I've seen in my career, I'd say there's a high likelihood of it. And if not in this area, maybe in another area. And he's not going to necessarily learn a lesson from a 6-month sentence. I think it's deplorable. It's not so much the sexual registry thing that kind of resonates with me, because unlike my colleagues tonight, I have not had an opportunity to comment on this case. Really, it's not something that Nancy would necessarily ask me to offer commentary on a television show, because it doesn't involve a dead body. But right. I can tell you from an investigative standpoint, it makes cops and investigators, it's just another brick in the wall for us many times. It's another example of essentially kind of spit in the ocean to try to see if you can raise the water level at all. And it's pointless sometimes, and it's very frustrating.
Okay, also in the news, Santa Clara police may not work home games if Colin Kaepernick continues to protest. Here's the story. And
Santa Clara police might not work 49ers games amid Kaepernick protest. The union for the police force that patrols San Francisco 49ers Levi's Stadium threatened to not work home games over Kaepernick's continued protest of the national anthem, according to multiple reports on Friday night. The Santa Clara Police Officers Association said Kaepernick halting his pre-game protest could result in officers choosing not to work at their facilities, NBC Bay Area reported. The 49ers are scheduled to open the season there against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday, September 12th, as part of a national television doubleheader. Kaepernick was photographed Wednesday wearing socks that displayed cartoon pigs wearing police hats. He said he has worn them before, but this time the socks grabbed national attention, coming just 5 days after it also became known that he has chosen to sit during the national anthem before 49ers games. The 49ers, according to the report, said Friday they continue to stand behind the statement they first made when Kaepernick's protest was first published. In that statement, the team said, in respecting such American principles as freedom of religion and freedom of expression, we recognize the right of an individual to choose to participate, or not, in our celebration of the national anthem. Messages left with police union and the Santa Clara police by USA Today Sports were not immediately returned Friday night.
Okay, and Bremner, let's start with you. What's your take on Colin Kaepernick and sitting down for the national anthem?
Well, I think we've seen a bit of a sea change since the first disdain, expressed nationally about what he did. I mean, you've got the president now weighing in his favor, and we even have one of our Seattle Seahawks that took a knee, I think, during the national anthem, and also one of our star female soccer players up here. So I think that if you want to make a statement and you're an athlete or celebrity, you've got the floor. And so in my mind, I applaud people that do that. On the other hand, I don't condone the disrespect for this country, or for our national anthem. So, I'm somebody that looks at him and says, I would try a different way to get your message across. I don't think it's appropriate to disrespect our flag, our national anthem, our military, and all the things good that we stand for in this country. I just don't think that was the right type of thing and forum to use. And that's just me personally, and it didn't resonate with me, and it doesn't today, despite what the president has said or others have done in joining in with him.
Alex Sanchez, you're pretty vocal about this last week, but now it's getting even more attention, as Ann just said. So share with us your opinion on this again.
Well, I voiced last week, and I'll voice again today. Yeah, I believe in people having a First Amendment right, and if he wants to kneel down, I don't like it. I think it was disrespectful. I think it was inappropriate. I think he had all those people in the stadium and all the people on TV essentially being held hostage so he can make his point. I don't like that. I agree with him. I agree there's racism and there's police brutality. I fight that every day in court, and I will continue fighting every day in court. But I don't want to be forced by somebody like Kaepernick to address a certain situation when I'm there trying to enjoy a game of football. And I didn't appreciate what he did. Now, what I do find more offensive than what Kaepernick did, and he has a right to do it, nobody can stop him. What I do find more offensive is the police saying that they're not going to monitor the games. They're not going to go and do. These are government employees. What are you talking about? We're going to allow government employees that are designed to provide security, we're going to allow them to essentially veto and overrule someone else's First Amendment right to protest by saying they're not going to go and monitor and provide security at those games, right? We're not talking about the general public who can turn around and say, we're not going to go and we're not going to go to that game because Kaepernick is playing. That's one thing. These are government employees. Their job is to provide security. And no matter what anybody's protesting about, that's their job to go there, right? I mean, this reminds me of the 60s. During the 60s, when a lot of African Americans were protesting down south and they wanted to march, the police were saying, no, you can't march because we can't guarantee your safety. Well, what kind of nonsense is that? In other words, the police are controlling who's allowed to protest. It's the same principle here. The police should not be allowed to control who is protesting. These are government employees. Do your job.
Okay, Joseph, what about you? You must have an opinion on this one.
Oh, yeah. I agree completely with Alex in the sense that I'm not a proponent of what's commonly referred to as the blue flu. If you've got, and I've worked in locations, I'll tell you a very glaring example, I think was in 87 or 88 when I was still working in New Orleans. The police in New Orleans decided to have the blue flu for 2 days during Mardi Gras season. Now, for those in the audience that have never been to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, it lasts for, the season itself lasts for 3 weeks. And there are parades that take place every night, and I'm talking thousands and thousands of people turn out to these things, including families, with small children. It's not all in downtown New Orleans. Some of the stuff's out on the periphery, and people are roaring drunk. They're having a good time, but it's a potentially dangerous environment. There are many times that police have to go out and protect people that they might not necessarily agree with. But Colin Kaepernick is one person in a stadium that houses thousands of other people, the thousands of other people are not necessarily in agreement, and even if they're not in agreement with the police or Colin Kaepernick, you have a job to do as a police officer, and you have to do it because you could have a situation that would escalate very, very quickly, and it would be completely out of control. I think that this is, I personally think this is nothing more than hyperbole. I think that it's just posturing on the part of the police union, which essentially is what this is, because they understand, what the risks are. I hope they do. If they don't, somebody needs to be retrained. But yeah, it's not the time or the place. I was sworn in as a soldier when I was 18 years old. I've worn a badge and a gun in addition to that. I've done my service to my country, I feel like, and to my community. If he feels the way he does, that's fine. That's fine. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's offensive to me personally as a veteran and as a public safety person and person that still trains public safety people and a person that stood over the dead bodies of public safety officers. It's, I don't like those socks that he was wearing, but there's nothing I can do about it, in the whole grand scheme of things.
Good point. Okay, the 9/11 15th anniversary is coming up. Let's go back to that day and how it unfolded.
Today, jury selection begins in a critical phase of the trial of Andrea Yates, accused of drowning her 5 children. Plus, superstar Michael Jordan in the news, the strongest words yet from Jordan, that he will be back. Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. Michael may be back. He's saying that tendonitis. We want to tell you what we know as we know it. We just got a report in that there's been some sort of explosion at the World Trade Center in New York City. One report said, and we can't confirm any of this, that a plane may have hit one of the 2 towers of the World Trade Center, but again, you're seeing the live pictures here. We have no further details than that. We don't know anything about what they have concluded happened there this morning.
ABC's Don Dahler, who is on the scene. Don, just give me some description again of what you can see now.
It appears that there is more and more fire and smoke enveloping the very top of the building, and as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God!
That looks like a second plane.
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
We just saw another plane coming in from the side. So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway.
Give him that. You can watch. You can film it. You can.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
That is the courtyard of the Pentagon. The Pentagon is indeed exactly what it's described, just on the other side of the Potomac River from the Capitol, and there you see fires burning in the courtyard of the Pentagon, confirming what we'd been told almost immediately by eyewitnesses.
The Pentagon itself has caved in from the top. There is much fire coming out of the windows. It looks like something from World War II, Peter.
A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way!
Let's go to the trade tower again, because we now have what do we have? We don't... it may be that something fell off the building.
Peter, it's Don Daler down here. I'm 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center. The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. It started with a gigantic rumble, folded in on itself, and collapsed in a huge plume of smoke and dust.
Get out of here!
We're talking about massive casualties here at the moment, and we have, And I'm just going to add to the chaos and the trauma of the day by saying that a large plane has now crashed about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh.
Peter, it crashed in an open field. All that you really see there is a huge crater. You can't even see it very well from our vantage point. A huge black gaping hole, as investigators are describing it. No survivors, Peter.
Oh my God.
The second tower.
It's hard to put it into words, and maybe one doesn't need to. Both those towers have now gone. The landscape of New York City has just been changed, and one has to assume that thousands of lives have been extinguished. Good Lord, it just...
This scene on the steps of the Capitol building tonight, just as the sun was going down, was very, very moving.
From the mountain to the prairie to the ocean, wide below. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
A tragic day indeed. Alex Sanchez, tell me about your feelings of the 15th anniversary and where you were.
Yeah, and that was a very, very disturbing, horrible day. I've often wondered whether or not people who live outside of New York felt as horrible about this as people that live in New York, simply because of the proximity of it. Somehow
right.
I think when things are far away, it seems like, that's in the distance, it's bad, but I don't know if people comprehended the horror of it. I live in New York, so very close. On that particular day, I was in my car heading to work and driving to work, and all of a sudden the radio went off. I was like, wait a minute. Did the radio? I don't know. Maybe the cell phone stopped working. But whatever it is, I'm listening to the radio, and all of a sudden, news report. Oh yeah, a plane went into the World Trade Center. And like most people, I was thinking, wow, this is a horrible accident. And then there started to be a tremendous buildup because I was heading to the George Washington Bridge, which leads into New York. And suddenly, you couldn't go anywhere because they had closed off the bridges to get into New York. So I turned around and I drove to my folks' house. And when I got to my folks' house, I went upstairs and was watching TV with them, and I saw the second World Trade Center fall. That was very horrible because we were thinking that there was tens of thousands of people that died. I mean, listen, 3,000 people died, and it's horrible. But at the time, we were thinking that maybe it was 50,000 people that were in those trade centers. But it was certainly a very tragic, horrible day that left a terrible mark and on the soul of America.
Yes, indeed, this Sunday. And Bremner, it will be 15 years. What's your take?
Well,
what's your thoughts on this?
To answer Alex's question about how others felt outside of New York, of course, I live in Seattle. And I saw the first plane hit on TV. I was getting ready to go to court that morning. I just gotten divorced, so I didn't have anyone to talk to. And I was like, did I just see that? You know, did that just happen? And then I got in my car to go to court, which is an outlying court we have here in Seattle, which is about an hour away. So I heard everything else on the radio as I was driving down to court, you know, about the collapsing, you know, everything. And it was just, I couldn't believe what was happening. I got to court. I was representing a judge of all people. And the judge I was in front of is a really strict judge. And I said, did anybody see the media, watch TV this morning? Nobody had. And I said, it was like a disaster in New York. And none of them had. The judge said, proceed. So I did, and I had my hearing all morning. And when I got back in my car to go back up to Seattle, the freeway was empty. And there were signs, you know, but they'd evacuated our highest, tallest buildings in Seattle. Nobody was in Seattle. I got back to my building, which is one of the highest buildings in Seattle, and it was empty. My office was empty. I felt like it was like the end of the world. I mean, there was nobody. And I'll never forget just being so devastated by all of it, but feeling like, am I the only one that's watching this or that sees this? And there was nobody to talk to because everyone was gone. It was just like deafening. And every time I go to New York, from when it happened until now, I always go back to pay homage, you know, to that site of where so many souls were lost. And I don't think any of us can ever get our arms around what happened that day. It's just horrific, and we should never forget.
Very well said. Joseph Scott.
Yeah, I had kind of an interesting event that occurred for me that day. I was on what we refer to as the morning watch, which is not what it sounds like. Morning watch means that you work from 10:30 at night until 6:30 in the morning. Okay, and as always, I got off at 6:30. If you've ever been to Atlanta, you know Atlanta's notorious for its traffic because it's an ill-planned place. And I'm driving home, and in those days I was so exhausted most of the time that I would just come staggering in. I would speak to my wife. We would talk, and literally at that moment in time, I would get ready for bed. That particular morning, I was very, very tired, and our children were still very small. My son had just been born. He's 15 now. He had been born in July the 6th. So my wife's taking care of an infant. Our girls were little. And I had this great bedroom that had these darkening shades. And I went and laid down and just went into this deep, deep sleep. And I guess it was probably at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I woke up to the phone ringing, and which is unusual because my wife was at home. She would normally pick up the phone, and you know, so that it wouldn't wake me if I was asleep. And it just kept ringing, and I picked it up. It's my wife's best friend, and she said, "So how are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing fine." She's like, "No, how are you doing with everything that's happened?" And, you know, like Ann talking about the end of the world, it's like I woke up, and when I'd gone to bed, it was one world, and when I woke up, it was a different world. And my wife had left the house with the kids, had gone to her parents' house, and had returned back. And when I asked her, "Why didn't you wake me up?" she said, "Because I felt like I was not going to see you again for an extended period of time." And that night, we, at the medical examiner's office, everybody in public safety was put on 12-hour shifts at that point in time. And we started working, I guess it was probably for about 8 to 10 days. We worked 12-hour shifts, which we did not normally do. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And a bunch of us at the medical examiner's office are part of what's called the DMOR teams, which are the disaster mortuary response teams that are a federal group that gets spun up in the times of of disaster, and our area, our region, was the region that got spun up for New York, and I had 5 people within a week from my office that left, and I didn't see them for 6 months. They physically went to Ground Zero to do body recovery. So it was very impactful for me. I had a lot of friends that were up there from all over the country doing body recovery. It completely changed the complexion of what we do in law enforcement, that's for sure, and in forensics as well. There were a lot of things that changed procedurally for us as a result of those events, and it will affect us for forever and ever, in my field at least, I know.
Very sad day indeed. Okay, and do you have time to stay on for a couple more stories?
Sure.
Okay, let's talk about the upcoming trial, Justin Ross Harris, and no soundbite. Let's just get right into it. Joe Scott, this case has been delayed since April.
Yeah.
I think you have been following it.
Yeah.
What's your takeaway from this case, with everything that's going on with it?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. They're going in for jury selection, I think, next week, if I'm not mistaken. Trial slated to start first week of October. I might be wrong on my dates, but I know that approximates it. It's been moved, I don't know, probably it's 275, 300 miles away. For those that don't know, Brunswick is at the opposite end of the state from Atlanta. And as a matter of fact, it's in the greater, Brunswick actually is in the greater metropolitan area of Jacksonville, Florida. So it's as far south in Georgia as you can go without being in Florida. I am probably going to be going down there. I'll be doing some commentary down in Brunswick outside of the courthouse, potentially with some of the forensics. I will be in studio with Benny Politan at the local NBC affiliate in Atlanta several times a week following this trial. I think that it's the more I think about it, the more my blood chills, because it's an absolutely horrific set of circumstances. It'll be very interesting to see how this plays out, at least from a forensic standpoint, and how the cops have kind of woven the story relative to the narrative that they're going to put forth in court, relative to his actions. So I'm going to be very interested to see how this develops.
Okay, and what's your takeaway?
Well, I mean, I think that no matter where the case is heard, the defense has, I think, insurmountable problems. I mean, I just, frankly, when I see change of venue requests and grants, and I think about that everything's on the web all the time, I always wonder if those kinds of arguments really hold any sway in this day and age. And then, of course, the change itself, would it make a difference? I don't think so. So, I mean, it's just a very bad set of facts. I mean, I'm interested to see what Alex has to say about this defense, but I just don't see, this happens to other people. We know that all around the country. But this particular case has very bad facts.
Very bad facts, Alex, indeed. And what is your take? Alex, I think you have some points for the guy, if you were representing him. That you shared with us last week.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a bad case. There's a child that's dead. He's in a hot car, and that's terrible. But I still think the prosecution is somehow, I think they may have some more difficulties than people think, because, this guy's basically saying, look, it was an accident. Even if he was sexting, and even if he was, talking to girls and trying to get dates or whatever this guy's doing, he may have simply forgot. And when you have kids and you're living an active life, I mean, it sounds bad that you're sexting. Someone else could be on Facebook. Someone else could be, following, a sports team. What's important is that their attention is diverted. And I think people are going to be, I hope jurors are not going to be, extremely prejudiced against him simply because his method of diversion was that he was sexting as opposed to being someone that was following an important football game. What's significant is that his attention was diverted. And the only question I have is, did he act intentionally or with gross negligence, or was this simply an accident that could happen? Accidents happen in life. Now, if there's evidence to show that he intentionally was trying to kill his kid and had some plans, well, he deserves to be convicted. If evidence comes in showing that he was grossly negligent, then maybe he needs to be convicted of a lesser charge. But if evidence comes in simply showing, listen, this was simply an accident. And in life, accidents happen. We don't live a pristine, a perfect existence. That's for the afterlife. We're not there yet.
That is true. Accidents do happen, but it's up to only the judge and the jury in this case, and we'll see what they render. Okay, here's the final story. It is Bill Cosby gets his trial date.
A date for Bill Cosby's sexual assault trial has been tentatively set for early June 2017, but Cosby's lawyers expressed concern that racial bias has already condemned their client in the court of public opinion. Cosby's lawyer said in a public statement, Mr. Cosby is no stranger to discrimination and racial hatred. The time has come to shine a spotlight on the trampling of Mr. Cosby's civil rights. Cosby's lawyers specifically called out attorney Gloria Allred.
Although it is too late for these three new accusers to take any legal action against Mr. Cosby because of the statute of limitations, these three courageous women want Mr. Cosby to be held accountable, and I'm proud to represent them.
Even though Allred isn't representing the one woman who is pursuing him in court for the allegations, Cosby's lawyers say her, quote, campaign against Mr. Cosby builds on prejudice. The same day Cosby's court date was set in Philadelphia, Allred and one of Cosby's accusers spoke at a news conference in California to advocate for state legislation that would remove the statute of limitations for various felony sex crimes. The Philadelphia case involves Andrea Constant. She alleges Cosby drugged and sexually assaulted her in 2004 after developing a friendship with her while she worked for the women's basketball team at his alma mater, Temple University. Cosby hasn't contested they engaged in sexual activity, but argues it was consensual. The prosecution has filed a motion to use testimony from 13 other women accusing Cosby of assault as evidence, but it's still not known if they'll be allowed to testify. For Newsy, I'm Samantha Crook.
Okay, and Bremner, you've been following this case from the get-go. What is your takeaway from this latest thing, what they're saying about Bill Cosby, that he's fine, this and that? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he's already had two failed motions to dismiss. I know Gloria, and there's no racial animus in what she said, and he can't point to racial animus. She's got a civil case. She's got a big civil case with a lot of victims, and her daughter Lisa Bloom has the rest of the victims. I think there's over 50 now, 5-0. So I don't know where that gets him. I mean, he's up against it. He's going to have a trial. He's tried to not have a trial, but he's going to have one. And there's plenty of evidence against him in that case. And, it only just takes one conviction to where he goes to prison. And I've always said, long before this prosecution was commenced, that it would just take one, and there would be one. And here he is, and he's facing it. He's going to have to face a jury and try to defend. But it's going to be tough. And I think that the other pattern evidence, with other women will come in before the jury, drugging women and having sex with them. And then finally, in full disclosure, I represent one of his victims out here in Seattle. She hasn't filed.
Oh, really?
I do. And she went through exactly the same thing as all these other women. He drugged her. He gave her money. He tried to help her with her education, he said. Tried to ingratiate himself to her parents. She was a model, and she went to the University of Washington. And I think, time's up for Bill Cosby. It's time for a little justice to come into this after all this time and all these victims.
Wow. Alex Sanchez, well, you also been following this case from the get-go. What's your take on this guy being blind all of a sudden? And
first of all, I've said it before. I'll say it again. Bill Cosby is a sexual perverted monster, and that's all there is to it. I've listened to the testimony of these women. I've heard their stories, and you would have to believe that 50 women somehow got together and decided to engage in some elaborate conspiracy to frame Bill Cosby. I'm particularly outraged at the argument by their lawyers. Yeah. I'm particularly outraged at the lawyers throwing in this race card stuff. What the hell are they talking about? Some of the women that he raped were black women. So I suppose these black women are part of the whole racial, bias against Bill Cosby. That having been said, that having been said, and I would sure like to know Ann's opinion on this. I really do. That having been said, I'm against the prosecution of Bill Cosby in this particular case. And the reason I'm against it is simple. The prosecution made a deal with Bill Cosby 10 years ago or so. They said, you tell us what happened so that this woman could have a civil suit against you, and we promise not to prosecute you. The prosecutor came in and admitted that was the case, that they made a deal. There would be no prosecution. And the judge, because he's bowing to political pressure in the community, said, no, a matter of this importance should have been in writing. Nonsense. It doesn't have to be in writing. You make a deal, and as long as the prosecution agrees that that was the deal, then there's the deal. And the fact that he's being prosecuted, I think, is absolutely outrageous. And Ann, please tell me your opinion on this.
Okay, thanks. I know what the argument was against that argument of this prior deal being precluding the prosecution, and it was simply this, that there was no grant of formal immunity in writing, and of course we had a successor prosecutor because it's an elected prosecution position, so therefore this current prosecutor couldn't be bound by an informal quote-unquote promise of the former prosecutor unless it was an absolute grant of immunity. And so, and I get that, because you can have conversations, et cetera, but you're only bound as a prosecutor if you gave someone immunity from prosecution. And the court agreed, and that's why this case is going forward.
And that's nonsense. It's nonsense. Because
that was the argument.
That may have been the argument, but the prosecutor at the time was representing the county where this took place. And they make important decisions. Those important decisions are binding to the office. And they made a commitment that they were not going to prosecute him. They basically backtracked on that commitment. And that's important because in the future there's going to be commitments. That office can't be trusted anymore. You have to be able to trust prosecutors. And they said they weren't going to prosecute him.
No, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. But I also see the argument that carried the day, which was, we're only bound by grants of immunity. And that's how we, as an office, and I was a prosecutor, you don't just make, representations. If you're not going to prosecute somebody or you're not going to go after somebody with certain statements, you immunize them. And it's done in writing, and it's only done by the elected prosecutor themselves. I mean, most of the deputies can't even do that. They don't have the authority. So that was the argument. That's the way they've done things.
I know,
Ann,
and you're a great lawyer, and I know where you're coming from, but I know that you agree with me, and you know I'm right.
Oh, no, I get what you're saying. I'll just say that much, Alex. I love you, and I get what you're saying. But that argument carried the day, and that's why it's going to trial.
And Jim Scott, what do you have to say about Mr. Actor Bill Cosby?
Oh, I have nothing to say. I respectfully yield my time on the floor to esteemed counsel. I got to hear more from these two. Really, please, you guys continue. There's nothing I can add to this. I love to hear the lawyer talk. Please continue on, guys. I'd really like to hear. I'd really like to hear more. I tell you what, I'd like to know. I'd like to know what level of intestinal fortitude and bravery does it take on the part of this one person to come forward and be the, I don't know, litmus test or whatever. I'd like to hear your thoughts about this one person that's kind of wholly represented this whole grouping of people here, are the one defendant, two defendants, a very small group that's representative of the greater whole. Please continue.
Very interesting indeed.
Mm-hmm.
They are brave women to come forward to say all this happened to them. Okay, let's get to a couple of calls we have here. I believe we have Mary calling us out of Virginia. She's first here on King Jordan Radio. Mary, hi.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jordan, and hi, Alex, and Ann, and Joseph.
Hi.
Hi.
Mary, how are you?
I'm fine. It was just a somber few minutes when I didn't know we were going over the 9/11 incident, and I live an hour from Washington, D.C., and my husband is an inspector at United Airlines, and I had called in sick that morning, and he was getting ready to go to the airport, and we did not see the first plane, but when the second plane hit, my husband said, "That's a United plane," because up to that point, we didn't know if it was a small aircraft, but my husband had said it's too big of a hole for that. But they were reporting they didn't know if it was a private plane or whatever. But when the second one hit, my husband said, "That's a United plane," because he recognized it. And he could see it, and it was a United plane. And then it hit here an hour away at the Pentagon. So it was just very surreal for me and for him. They closed the airport down, of course. He did not report for work. And I remember even the day after that, no one being on the roads for any reason. There was no one on the roads. Everything changed from that day on. For my husband, working as an aircraft inspector, every time he goes to work, he has to go through security. And for the first year or two, they were not allowed to have any tools except for a screwdriver. Can you imagine? Because there was the fear that a mechanic would leave a tool in the seat by mistake, and then a terrorist would get it. So every time they got a tool, they would have to sign it out and then sign it back in, or they would get in trouble. So, it affected everybody, but it was like before 9/11 and after 9/11, the world changed completely, at least to me and to a lot of us. And I also lost someone that I knew that worked at the World Trade Center and survived the first attack. Remember the first attack? The bombs underneath the garage?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay, he survived that, but he didn't survive the second one. I think I would have changed jobs after that. Venue, as they say. So anyway, it's pretty sombering. And I have a question on the Ross Harris case. I know Alex and I were talking about it last week. Are they going just for murder, or do they have a lesser included?
As far as I know, they're charging with murder and probably with lesser included also, which is quite common. So they could charge you with murder, but they could also charge you with criminally negligent homicide. They could charge you with various degrees of manslaughter. I don't think charging him with one count even makes any kind of sense from a prosecution's point of view, and I know Ann could comment on this, because if they find him not guilty of that one count, then the prosecution's completely out of the box. What they usually do is they charge you with multiple counts, just in case you're found not guilty of the top charge. At least they have other charges that the jury can find you guilty of. So more likely than not, he's charged with multiple counts.
Okay.
No, that's right. They call it a suicide if it's just one. It's null or nothing.
Right, that would be crazy.
So if he were not found guilty of murder and guilty of gross negligent homicide, what just a rough time is he looking at, if he were to be?
Well, you know what? Let me tell you, I don't know what the laws in that state exactly as far as sentencing goes, but if you were in New York, if you were charged with murder and you were convicted, you're facing 25 to life. 15 to life minimum. But let's say the jury found you not guilty and you were found guilty of criminally negligent homicide. That sounds bad, but you're only facing up to 4 years in jail.
4 years?
So, for criminally negligent homicide in New York, you're facing up to 4 years in jail. And that's a significant difference in time.
Wow, unbelievable.
Yes, indeed. Is there anything else, Mary?
No, just I just want to say one last thing is I don't care whether he was sexting or talking or Facebooking or whatever. To me, it's still negligence that his attention span for that 1 minute was so taken by something else that he could possibly forget his son in the backseat. And that's all I want to end it with.
Okay.
And good evening to everybody. Have a good night, and talk to you guys next
Thank you, Mary.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you for those excellent points.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, let's go out to Sarah. She says hello on King Jordan Radio. Good evening, Sarah. You're live with the panel of Ann Bremner, Joseph Scott Morgan, and Alex Sanchez.
What an esteemed panel it is. Hi, everybody.
Yes, I agree.
No worries, Sarah.
Hi. Hi, Ann and Alex and Joseph. I, too, like Mary, when you were playing all of the sound bites from 9/11, it took me back. And I, too, always say, never, never forget. I do want to say one thing, that during this horrific tragedy, our country came together in unity. And what happened? I wish maybe Kaepernick should hear all of those sound bites. I don't know how old he was when 9/11 happened. And I understand completely that he is exercising his right and he's making his point and his cause is important. But I also think he's just getting too much attention. Okay, I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't want to see it about it anymore. There's so many other things to report on all networks, on all radio shows. Stop talking about him. I mean, would that, I think, help maybe? Anybody?
Big national story.
But why? I mean, it's okay. We all know what the story is. Now let it go and let him do whatever he wants. I just think we're just giving him too much attention, really and truly. I mean, there was a tree hugger in California standing up for the trees' rights. That was on the news in California for like 2 weeks, and I thought, okay, we all know about it enough already. And I think when I say enough already about Kaepernick, I'm not saying enough already about his cause or what he's standing for. I just think I just think he doesn't deserve any more attention.
Well, Sarah, what I was going to say, in North Korea, everybody is required to have a television screen in their house. And every morning the great leader comes on that screen. And everybody's required to watch that great leader and listen to what he has to say. And if you don't watch it, you could be in big trouble. And when I say trouble, they'll take you out and shoot you in the head and kill you. But we don't live in a country like that.
He just assassinated somebody for falling asleep at a state meeting.
Right. But we don't live in a country like that. We're not forced to watch TV. We're not forced to read the Internet. We're not forced to read the newspapers. And as far as Kaepernick goes, if you disagree with him, you know what? Just turn the channel. Don't read that story on the Internet, and don't read that article in the paper. You know what? You'll be just fine, Sarah.
As an individual, yes, I'll be fine. But I still stand by what I said. The country is giving him too much attention. Okay, moving on. BrockTurner. I have to say I agree with both of you, Alex and Ann, and I did appreciate all of your comments, Joseph, especially about the investigation of any kind of horrible crime like that and how hard the investigators work, and then the result is something like what happened. I do have mixed feelings about, obviously, his sentence and the whole sex registry. I, too, agree with Alex. I think it needs to be I think it needs to be defined as with the severity of the crime. If we don't, I don't know if he is, or he were going to do this again, but I don't think he should be in the same category as someone who has molested and raped 6 victims or 8 victims. He just should not be. I don't think he should be in that category. That being said, I agree with you, Alex, about the whole drinking thing. No one should be raped. But when I, and my family sent my niece off to college last week, we were very serious when we said, do not drink. Do not get out of control. And to me, it's not blaming the victim. To me, it is rape prevention. And no one talks about rape prevention anymore, because then you kind of sound like you're blaming the victim. But we have to prevent these things. I mean, I lock my doors so that I can prevent a robbery. Someone might break in, but I'm trying to prevent it. And I think that along the way, somehow rape prevention has gone to the bottom of everything, and I think it needs to be brought up again. And Bill Cosby, who really, really likes unconscious victims, yes, I believe that he does need to be brought to trial. But I also agree with Alex. Gosh, Ann, I do agree with you a lot. But tonight it's Alex's day, I guess. I'm very disturbed about the deal that was broken. And I'm not a lawyer by any means, but from everything I've read and heard, it bothers me. And this new issue that came up in the hearing, and I'm very anxious to hear the judge's ruling on the recorded phone call from Andrea's mother, and how California is a two-party state, and I think Pennsylvania is a two-party state, but Canada is a one-party state. I don't know. All I know is Bill Cosby said something like, do I hear a beep? What's going on here? And then she goes, oh, that's my parrot. So she clearly lied about recording him. And even if he had a feeling that he was being recorded, he was dumb enough to keep talking. But I think our laws mean something. And I do believe that she broke the law by recording him without his knowledge, and I personally don't think that phone call should be admitted into evidence. And Jacob Wetterling, my God, how sad is that, this whole story. And then we were introduced to a victim that was kidnapped and molested but survived by this monster, and how difficult and horrible his life has been. And I think that I understand legally that there was no case to prosecute for murder. I understand no evidence or whatever. And I just hope he never, ever, ever gets out. And if anybody wants to make any comments about what I've been running my mouth about, please do so.
Yes, Sarah, let me tell you something. Your comments on the college rape situation, your statements about rape prevention, now you're in danger of being accused of being a sexist.
I know. It's horrible.
Are you prepared for that?
Well, I have a lot of people angry at me. I really do. And I'm not blaming any. But I'm not blaming any victims.
Hammered. I get hammered. But the fact of the matter is that it's almost like that subject is off limits. You're not even allowed to bring it up. What do you mean you're not allowed to bring it up? You should be allowed to bring that up. People do need to be cautious and exercise common sense.
Right. Exactly.
It's true.
But they shouldn't be raped either. So
of course not. Nobody's saying that.
Right. And it's almost like the old days when people would say, well, look at how short her skirt was. I mean, that's horrible. That is, there's no place for that kind of even thought process. but you kind of have to take care of yourself. You have to think, okay, so I'm going to drink like 8 drinks, and I'm not going to be responsible for knowing anything. Anyway.
I'd like to know Ann Bremner's position on this. You've been pretty silent on that, Ann. What's the story?
Well, I think
on rape prevention.
I think my position. I mean, I prosecuted these cases for many years, and I represent victims. Some people call me the Gloria Allred of Seattle, but so if you're incapable of consent, then you're incapable of consent. And I have a case right now where my victim at a university was asked, "What were you wearing? Have you had sex before?" And they said that she invited trouble when she let the guy come in, or when she went to the guy's room. So those attitudes are still out there. And so my feeling is, sure, you have to be careful. And we women, of course, have to take care of ourselves. And you shouldn't go out and do things that put you at risk. But the answer is that when somebody rapes you when you're unconscious, nobody in the law, no one in the jury is going to look behind that and say, how'd you get there? Because that's just not really allowed. I mean, I don't think it should be. I mean, if you're completely unconscious, someone shouldn't rape you, period.
Well, of course, and I agree 100%. I just would hope that women, like you said, take care of themselves so they don't end up in a courtroom.
I'm with you, Sarah.
That's my only hope, really.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And, but on the other hand, we can never go back to where we used to be, which was, did you invite the rape? Was your skirt too short? Et cetera. Because we've come a long way, baby, as they say. And I want to stay where we are, which is more enlightened about women and rape.
And I also think that federally or nationally or state by state, I also think that the statute of limitations for rape, for especially a minor, there should be no statute of limitations.
I'm with you, and that's what Corey's asking for, I think.
I agree with you 100%. As a matter of fact, this guy, Heinrich, who raped Wetterling, there was that other victim that testified, right? He's come out. He said he was 12 years old. This guy, Heinrich, kidnapped him and raped him. Guess what? He's not, Heinrich's not facing any charges for raping that kid because the statute of limitations expired.
Exactly.
Right.
And why there are statute of limitations at all, is a mystery to me. These people should be held accountable at some point.
Exactly.
Especially
and
when they
poor
were
child.
drugged.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Bill Cosby. No, I'm just going to say, especially the women that were drugged by Bill Cosby because they didn't have a memory of it. So shouldn't you have an extension of the statute for that alone? I think in Canada there's no statute of limitations. And I don't know why we have these for any minors, let alone for any adults. We don't have statutes of limitations for homicide. Why not get rid of them for rape?
Right, and I think the other victim that Alex is talking about, his name is Jared. Jared Shirel. It was how sad that he could not make an identification, and that's why the case didn't go forward.
Yeah. No, it's a tragedy.
Joseph, you're silent. What are you thinking?
Hey, I'm sitting back just absorbing all these great legal minds. As far as the statute of limitations, I've always found it curious that because rape to me in many cases is worse than a homicide, because of the horror that comes along with this, and the fact that there is a statute of limitations when it comes to these horrible crimes like this, it's kind of a head scratcher. Because it never diminishes, it never stops. These people that are victims wind up being affected for the rest of their lives, and
absolutely.
You can't. You can't. Sometimes they'll develop these conditions where, if the person is even caught, the individuals are so terrified to even go back into public. Their entire life has been altered. To the point where they can't function with the rest of us. So I have a real problem with after a few years you get a pass. So I think that's something that could certainly be re-examined.
Well, I won't keep any of you any longer. I so appreciate you talking with me, to me, teaching me things, and and listening to me running off. So thank you, Jordan, for taking my call, and thank you, all of you.
They were
Bye-bye.
great points, as always. Thank you.
You bet, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Night-night.
Absolutely, and let's go around, and if you want to say your website or Twitter, let's start with you, Ann.
My website is annbremner.com, and Twitter is at Ann M, as in Marie Bremner. And am I supposed to say what I'm working on? No, that's okay.
I was going to ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
That case that you helped worked on, what's her name?
Amanda Knox?
Can't remember her name.
Yeah,
right,
I was just going to say that there's a new documentary coming out on Netflix about Amanda Knox, and I helped her for
really?
7 or 8 years. And we had another documentary last week on Reels about Amanda Knox out of the UK, and she's been busy with different innocence projects all around the U.S. and especially here in Seattle. I saw her last weekend, and she's living a very normal life finally. So that's really gratifying.
Yeah, you know, Ann, on that Amanda Knox case, you know, I personally think she's guilty of sin. But that's
you.
My humble opinion.
I could tell you, I could quote you chapter and verse. I've been involved in this case for a very, very long time, and she's absolutely stone cold innocent.
You know why? But you know why I think she's guilty? Because she looks so stone cold guilty. She has a very bad appearance.
She's very quiet. She's very stoic, and she's very sweet, actually. And I could go on and on about the lack of evidence in this case, but suffice it to say that the Italian highest court said that she was completely exonerated, beyond not guilty. There was no evidence, a dearth of evidence to connect her to the crime, and that all of the errors of the police in the forensics were stunning. And they went out of their way to say that this was beyond an acquittal. It was a complete exoneration.
By the way, being quiet.
What?
Being quiet, being quiet, stoic, and sweet. That's a recipe for murderers.
Well,
that's
you know
exactly what they're like.
They tried this case 3 times, triple jeopardy, and it went all the way to their Supreme Court, and they completely exonerated her. That has been exhaustively reviewed, and has been completely exonerated. Finally, I mean, it was an absolute travesty.
Did she ever take a lie detector test?
No, and she didn't have to.
What's your piece of evidence, Alex, that you think she's guilty?
No, my piece of evidence is, I mean, to tell you the truth, I didn't study the case in great detail, but it's based upon me simply looking at her, and there's something about her appearance and her demeanor and the way she expresses herself, which seems there's something dark there.
That's what the Italians did, and every day to that prosecutor was Halloween. I mean, he saw her the way you just described. That's all they ever had.
Well, you know, listen, all power to her. I hope she lives a good life, but I remain very suspicious of her, Ann.
Okay. You and I can have a conversation with this one, Alex. I got all kinds of stuff to talk to you about.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so Joe Scott Morgan, your book is...
my book. Yeah, go ahead.
Is available.
Available on Amazon, in Kindle, and in paperback, Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of Southern Death Investigator. Check out a recent 2-part interview I did with Crime Spree magazine. It was a 2-parter that came out, dropped a couple of weeks ago, several thousand words, just talking about my career and kind of my worldview on things relative to forensics and death investigation. A real privilege and honor to be able to do that. Check us out at Jacksonville State University, where I am the Distinguished Scholar of Applied Forensics. Our web address is jsu.edu. Check out our Center for Applied Forensics there. We do have a Facebook under that same title, JSU Center for Applied Forensics. And we post interesting articles all the time relative to current issues. There's a lot of stuff happening right now in forensics, a big study that's just come out, dropped from the feds recently in regards to regarding bite mark evidence now as junk science, and hair and fibers are soon to follow. I think the way it's looking, a lot of changes on the front for forensics and forensic practice.
No doubt about it. And your Twitter account is what?
It's Medco Legal Death, MDCO, Legal, Legal, Death, DEATH. That's my Twitter handle. You can just find me there at Joe Scott at Medco Legal Death.
Right. Alex, your website is, you're in the New York area, of course, anybody in the tri-state area, good attorney.
My
right
website
here, Sanchez.
alexandersanchez.com. I do have a Twitter account also. I don't use it that much, but I guess if I'm contacted by people in your listening audience, perhaps I will. It's false arrest.
I like that.
That's my Twitter account.
That's a good one. That's a good one indeed. So
it's great being
Ann.
here tonight. Great, Ann. It was great seeing you, talking
great
to you,
to
and
see
Joe.
you, Alex.
We had a great show tonight.
Yeah, and Joseph and Jordan. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thoroughly enjoyed being with you guys.
Absolutely. Take care to Ann and Joseph and Alex. Have a good weekend, guys.
Thanks so
a lot,
much.
Sandy.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to Ann Bremner out of Seattle. Thanks to Joe Scott Morgan. Thanks to Alex Sanchez. Thanks to Mary, who called in, Sarah, who called in, Madeline, Vicky Over, who's listening, Pedro, who's listening. Thank you to all of you. Okay, since it is TBT, let's go back to 1995 with Will Smith's Shy Guy. Take a listen.
You think they're going to believe we cops, man?
Well, they going to believe I'm a cop. You know, I was kicking flavor. I don't know about you, though.
Man, you got to be crazy. I did some work up